Okay, let us move on this. So last time we discussed about the characteristics of energy. So we take turn to read. We have some people in the class. Yeah, would you mind to read this 11, please? I'm William. Yeah. Okay. Please.
Okay. What, venerable sir, is the characteristic mark of energy? Reinforcing, O king, so that those good qualities which it supports do not fall away. Give me an illustration. Just as, O king, when his army has been broken up by a larger one, the king would call to mind every possible ally to reinforce his army and break up the large army. Thus reinforcing is the mark of energy. For this was said by the Blessed One, the energetic, noble disciple, O monks, puts away unwholesomeness and cultivates good, shuns the blameworthy and develops the blameless, and thus does he keep his mind pure. So this, the analogy given for the reinforcing of the armies reinforcing, I'm trying to think about, like, in our daily practice, how energy would show up as opposed to, like, in a, a king's army situation. So if we're energetic in our practice of mindfulness, meaning that we are, like, when we have free opportunities, instead of diving into some sort of distraction, if we're like, we remain energetic about the practice, we keep it in the forefront of our mind, then, I mean, that would be like reinforcing to our practice. We're directing our energy into it as opposed to in some other sort of diversion.
Yeah. Somehow, whichever thing we do, right? If it interests for us, definitely we put more energy for that, right? So I used to tell my students that when you learn Buddhism, if you don't practice, it's meaningless. It's like when you go to school to study chemistry. If you don't go to the lab to see how reaction of the chemical reaction is useless for all the formulas. So does Buddhism. So only when we do some kind of practices, we can recognize that we have ability to change or transform our mind. I talked with someone and they said, well, I've been practicing meditation for many years, but somehow I feel that I go the same cycle. I still have all kind of junk in my mind. And it happened to everyone because every day we have all kind of things going on in our mind. Like you say, right? Sometimes it's not easy to control the mind. Even for the beginners, meditation or for the advanced one. So this is normal, especially you have to deal with all kind of problems, school and at work, family, and so on and so forth. But the important thing for us to recognize is when we sit down, before we sit down, we have all kinds of chaos in our mind. But right after we finish meditation, we feel more calm. You feel that? William, you recognize that, right? You understand what I'm talking about?
Oh, yes, certainly.
Right there. That is the progress there. If we don't do any kind of practice, we still the same. You do some sort of meditation. So that's what I mean. So when you do the prayer, you may not recognize some kind of effectiveness. But when you really sit down to do meditation, you can recognize that effectiveness. So after the session, whether 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and so forth. And that's why I have so many students. they are non-Buddhist, but within a couple of weeks, they recognize that happiness. So when we recognize that, we put more effort in our practice. And that's what this is talking about here, energy here. Otherwise, if we don't see any kind of progress, sometimes it's boring. And again, let's say for us, we write books. Right? Every day we write, let's say one page. 1 week we may write up to one chapter, so on and so forth. We see the progress there. But if we do meditation, then we have expectation. We need to have some kind of progress. We need to expect that, okay, today I can sit for 10 minutes. Tomorrow I can sit for another 15 minutes. Today I expect myself to calm my mind, and tomorrow I expect that I calm my mind. With that kind of expectation, it block our views. So a lot of things we can recognize that, yes, before the session, before meditation, we have all kind of problem or chaos in our mind. But right after that, we feel relief, we feel relaxed, we feel more calm. So that's the progress. That's the effectiveness of meditation. And that gives us some kind of incentive, encouragement to do more. That's what it's about. Yeah. So in the what you call tangible object, we can see our progress. Like your teacher, right? Okay, this semester I teach let's say 20 students, and next semester I may teach another 20 students. After I done with the semester, I feel that I'm fulfilling, right? Oh yeah, I have taught 20 students, because we can count, we can see them. We're going to talk about the mind. It's not easy for us to count, but we can recognize, can feel that. We can feel that when the more we do meditation, the more at peace we are. And all people can recognize that vibration. Like William, when you deal with patient, right? If you have that type of calmness, they could feel that, right, William? Yeah. You can please say the mic.
Sorry. It's for me, I find it's crucial. If I don't come to the visits, the appointments calm, then it's really things can kind of get a little jammed up in the conversation, where if I'm not patiently listening and hearing the whole story, I might attach on to some part of the story, and I'll be more likely to make some sort of assumptions, and people don't feel as heard. The connection isn't as good. But if I'm really patient and I'm waiting for the openings that they're giving me, then it's just so much more. It's harmonious, and I can allow the big picture to unfold and be more intelligent about recommendations and the course of action.
Yeah, for you as doctor, right? You could feel that kind of influence on your patient, right? And the teacher, right? And the teacher and people could feel that. How we interact with them, they could feel that. It comes from our mind, it comes from our own vibration. How we say, how we interact with them physically, mentally. You could feel that, especially with children, they're really sensitive, right? How much sensitive they are.
Yes, they're very sensitive, especially the little ones. They don't understand joking around, like everything they take very seriously.
Even college students, right? When you say something, they recognize. Yeah. And let's just go on. You follow me, right? Yeah. Especially when you are in the, say, Navy, right? It's very intense. Yeah. One of your decisions it affects the whole unit, even even the whole country, right? He's going to Navy. Yeah. And in Navy, they have Buddhist chaplain too.
Do they?
They
I was
do.
wondering if they did. That's
Yeah.
good news.
Coming up, this is not the prevalence for all, but I heard have some Buddhist chaplain in Army, Navy, Marine also.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, anyway, thank you. We would like to read this.
What Nagasena is the characteristic mark of mindfulness? Noting and keeping in mind, as mindfulness springs up in the mind of the recluse, he repeatedly notes the wholesome and unwholesome, blameless and blameworthy, insignificant and important, dark and light qualities, and those that resemble them thinking. These are the four foundations of mindfulness. These are the four right efforts. These are the four bases of success. These are the five controlling faculties. These the five moral powers. These are the seven factors of enlightenment. These are the eight factors of the noble path. This is serenity. This is insight. This vision and this freedom. Thus does he cultivate those qualities that are desirable and shun those that should be avoided.
It's the whole list that we studied last week before,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
So he's talking about mindfulness, just noting, looking at what comes to mind, looking at the wholesome and unwholesome, etc. And he's not really holding on to those, he's just seeing them, recognizing what's there.
Yeah. Yeah, there's for your reference, there's a long list here. It's on the top here. Just a long list. Oh,
They're there,
right there.
maybe above that.
Oh, right here. Oh, here.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Oh,
long list
yeah.
here. At the definition, like 5 control faculties in the 14 here. That's just written.
Okay.
5 moral power. This 115. 7 factor of enlightenment. This down here. 8 factor of level 5. This one 8 level 8 4 powers. For foundation of mindfulness right here. Mindfulness of body, mindfulness of the feeling, cause, and my object. The 4 right effort. The 4 base success. This one here. So these are the ways. Yeah, these are the ways that may come up. We discussed last time, last week. So when we do meditation, somehow pop up all kind of thought, right? Good thinking, bad thinking, some kind of principle or some kind of lesson that you teaching the student. And so the idea here is system point here, noting and keep in mind. Why is it different from analyzing and noting? Why is it different?
Analyzing is putting a feeling or attachment onto things, and noting is just recognizing.
Recognize that's all. But like when we sit in front of the street, right? People drive car, pass by us, whether left or right, left, or whether it's black car, white car. So we just take a notice of that. But if we analyze, oh, this is black car, this is white car, what happened? What happened when we analyze them? What happened there?
Tell yourself a story about it, or start to make up things that go with it.
Yeah, and it comes with like and dislike. Oh, I like this car. I don't like this car. I like the person. I like this person, and so forth. We jump in and out with what we call duality, good, bad, beautiful, and so forth and so forth. That makes our mind moving, our mind fluctuated. and that's greater problems. When we like certain forms, certain people, we have tendency to attach to. If we don't like, we have tendency to reject too. But that's why with this type of attachment or rejection, we come with, you can say that it's not type of suffering because we have tendency to attach. If we cannot get, we get stuck there. Yeah. And if we try to reject, but they're still around, that's where we have the resentment, rejection. So that's why noting and keep in mind, that's all. That's just more important. Be observer. Like William, we talked about the ACT before, right? We get the what do you call it, self-context, right? Yeah. Yeah, we study ACT. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Let's move on then. So these are the the terms. I mean that reflect the meanings that we could show up there.
Give me an illustration. It is like a king treasurer who reminds his master of the size of the mark and the amount of wealth in his treasury. How is keeping in mind the mark of mindfulness? If mindfulness springs up in the mind, he searches out the categories of good quality and their opposites thinking. Such and such qualities are beneficial, and such are harmful. Thus does he make what is unwholesome in himself disappear and maintain. Give me an illustration. It is like the prime minister of the king who advises him on the right course of action.
Okay. Yeah, that's enough. Yeah.
It's almost like the noting is sorting things to a certain extent, and the more you can kind of, it seems like, note what's beneficial, maybe. I wouldn't say good or skillful, maybe, instead of unskillful. And the more you recognize that, the more you kind of train your mind in that direction.
Yeah. So William, you recognize this one, right? This is somehow based on the Theravada's principle, right? Keep the wholesome one and delete the unwholesome one, right? William, you recognize that?
Yes.
So you recognize, so this is the basic teaching of Theravada's. When we talk about Mahayana, it's go beyond that. Especially for the mindfulness. Whichever thing happen in our mind, whether it's good or bad, we can recognize. But here is say, well, you need to keep the good one right here. Make disappear, maintain what is good. Is that the idea, William? Is that the idea, that keeping the good one and delete the bad one? Is this the idea here?
That's not my understanding of it. Noting the when thoughts arise, noticing that they've arisen, but not reacting to them in any way, not trying to hold on to some or to push others away, but simply to remain neutral and allow the mind to continue to calm down and to gradually become quieter of its own accord.
But how about this one? First, does he make what is unwholesome in himself disappear and maintain what is good? Is that idea? Idea that keep the wholesome one and delete the unwholesome one? Is that the idea?
I feel like it kind of implies that this idea of a self, that our self is responsible for getting rid of the unwholesome and holding on to the wholesome. But I think like in the Mahayana, the distinction of the Buddha nature is that the nature of our mind is, pure beyond ideas of purity or defilement, so that simply by letting the thinking mind come to rest, that then eventually that pure nature is no longer obscured. And so then right thought is just its natural expression. So it doesn't actually require a sort of controlling of thinking in a way where we have to like somehow make ourselves stop thinking bad thoughts, because generally we kind of get tangled up, if I try to tell myself like, okay, don't think about anything, the harder I try to not think about it, the more distress it's going to give me, and the more I'm going to think about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, does it follow that? Right?
Yeah. I mean, to me, it feels more simple. Like, what am I doing? Like, being mindful of my actions and what I'm doing. The things that are beneficial and serving me, I should continue to do. And those things that are bringing me down or making me unhappy, I need to cut those out.
Yeah, earlier when we were talking about the benefits of meditation, now it's hard to see. I know for me, one of the first things I noticed was being able to like see a situation I was in and say, oh, me doing this isn't helpful. And noticing that, like where before I was so entangled in things that I didn't notice it. So when it's talking about the unwholesome things, that's what I would classify as maybe unwholesome. Not helpful, maybe more than anything, but just that hiccup in my brain of saying, oh, I recognize this now, and I didn't before. So that's kind of what this brings to mind for me. It's like it helps me make better decisions.
Yeah. So basically, this one is a bit confusion. Is that right, William? So somehow, again, the idea is to be absorbed, right? To pay attention and to recognize, I would say, right? And like William said, as long as we recognize whichever thing happens in our mind, eventually our mind will be calm. When the mind calm down, so that's a goodness nature come about, or what we call Buddha nature appear. In the Zen tradition, sometimes Zen master give the analogy of the cloud. When we have the cloud, we could not see the sun up there. But when there's no cloud, the sun shines everywhere. The sun shines naturally. So does the mind. If we let go of everything, so like we let go of the cloud, and eventually the sun of wisdom will shine naturally. We don't need to seek for. We can let go of those kind of thoughts that we absorb. That's what it's about. It doesn't mean that we have to delete the unwholesome one and keep the wholesome. That's it's a big confusion. Yeah. You might read, and you can read up here and here.
On the Prime Minister?
Yeah, and here.
It is like the Prime Minister of the
No,
Oh.
and
this was said by the Blessed One. Mindfulness, I declare, O monks, is helpful everywhere. What, Nagasena, is the characteristic mark of concentration? Leading, O king, for all good qualities have concentration as their chief. They incline to it, lead up towards it. Give me an illustration. As the rafters of a house incline and lead up to the ridgepole, and the ridgepole is the highest point of the roof, so too all good qualities incline and lead up to concentration. And this was said by the Blessed One. Monks, develop concentration. A monk who is concentrated sees things as they really are.
I think this one is understandable. You understand this?
Yeah, I think
You understand this?
maybe like bringing mindfulness into your daily life. So like if you're always concentrated on what you do, you'll be able to see things more clearly and instead of attacking on feelings, like if something catastrophic happens, you can calm yourself down and then like really think about the situation clearly.
Yeah. So concentration as a chief, right? Look up to it, and is at the top, right, the highest point of the roof, right? And so to all good qualities imply a bit of concentration. Again, here, with this sum up of everything, a monk who is concentrated, see things as they really are. You understand what see things as they really are?
Yeah. I
What's the
think so.
difference?
Like, I don't know. I always think about like a text from somebody. It's just like if someone didn't respond or something, you can tell yourself like a million different stories. And that's like you kind of getting distracted versus the fact of the matter is they just didn't respond, and that's that. Like, you know, you can just see things clearly by being mindful about it.
Yeah, like when you step into this room and you see the Buddha, right? When you see that, that's all. But if you say, "Oh, okay, why is that? Okay, who made it? Why is that?" and so forth. That's not seen as the way they are. You know why? Why is that?
Just analyzing it.
Yeah. But in the school, we are taught to analyze things, right? And as a teacher and professor, we teach them, encourage them to analyze. In mindfulness practice, even in concentration, we say, see things as the way they are. What's the difference? See things as the way they are. See things so that we can analyze what the difference.
I think like you said, it's just not like making a story about it. I guess I wonder like is there ever like a good time to analyze things then versus just like not questioning it further?
So when somehow we manipulate the situation with our views, we filter out things through our views, right? If somehow we like that object, we manipulate that object in the way that we like, and vice versa. And that's not the thing that they really are. You understand, right? So let's say we see the white statue, right? Yes, when we see without any kind of analysis, yes, that's the white one. But we will analyze, okay, this good man, this bad man, oh, this I don't like, and so forth. That's we manipulate the image of the statue in the way that we like or don't like. And when, yes,
It's so hard.
it's hard. You understand
It's
that, right?
so hard to do that.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's hard to say, to see things as the way they are, right? Because we get used to that. We were taught when we were little, when we went to school, and now we passed out to our students, right? And that's a problem there. That's why when we manipulate our thought, manipulate our views according to the thing that we want to, that's why we create the problems there. That's why we conflict there. So, like William, right? It's a bit different, right? Yeah. So how a bit different between seeing things that the way they are and see things the way that we analyze them.
I think of it. It's kind of like the way that I'll work with patients' body structure. If there's a few analogies that really work well for me in this. Some people, the way that they will treat people is first they will check bony landmarks, and they'll check landmarks, see if they're symmetrical, and then kind of stand back and think about, okay, what am I going to do? Like they'll create a model in their mind and they'll think about that model. So they're analyzing, they're collecting some data, then they're analyzing it, and they're gonna like act on that. Another way to practice is where I'll, place my hand somewhere and then just wait. And I'll wait and see what I'm aware of. And then and not think about it. Just see what I'm aware of, and the ease will present itself. Like, what is easy for this region to do? What sort of motion is how it wants to move? It'll present itself without me analyzing or thinking about it. It just is. It comes in as as an awareness that this is easier. And then if I do that, well, then I can be aware of the change that happens that kind of confirms that awareness. So, I mean, that's most commonly how it shows up for me in my life. I think also the other part is it's just a greater peacefulness. Like if I'm on a beach and I'm on a mountaintop and I'm enjoying a vista, like analysis doesn't do anything. Analysis really only obscures this kind of expansive state of mind. And it's just very peaceful to let analysis go.
Yeah, thank you. You see that now? This is how, right? We see the input of the external environment. And this kind of information will be filtered out by our language, memory, custom, knowledge, and so forth. And it goes hand in hand with our emotion, behavior. And we analyze internally those type of information. And we use that type of information or analysis to react. Let's put it this way. Let's say, I used to tell, let's say, when they read my student, let's say 10 papers. And if I don't pay attention to the names of the student, it's much easier for me to rate them impartially. But if I somehow I reckon, oh, this person, this person, so somehow I have the tendency, oh, I like that person, I like that student, and so forth. And this is my steer me toward some kind of bias. You see that? Mm-hmm. Because I don't see things that the way they are, but I see this. I read my student paper in a way that I have some kind of favor to that person or this on paper and so forth. It may affect to them, especially for right. You see that analogy, right? So that's why for us as a scholar, have you published any book, right? And the paper?
No, we're working on it right now.
So for us, when before we publish any paper, William, you published any paper yet? Articles yet?
No.
So before we publish any paper, we need to send to what we call peer review, blind peer review. That means we're supposed to take up our names, and the peer review, they just review the content without knowing who authors are, so that they can have that kind of impartial view about what we say, what we write, what we draw in that articles. And that's why when we done that without bias or partial view, it's much easier for us to see things more clear. That's why it says here, when you concentrate, we just recognize as the way they are. That's all. We fall in the trap of analyzing with bias. We have tendency of being biased. In any circumstances, especially later on, let's say if you have girlfriends, right, and so forth. So whichever tendency does, it will affect you, and if somehow, even in some instant, she may not pay attention much of you, but because of something else, but you may think, oh, she doesn't want to go with me and so forth.
Yeah,
that's kind of bias. So that's why in this how we analyze things, how we filter out those excellent information. That's why in one sense, it's built up since we were born up to now.
Yeah.
We were taught. You have to analyze. You have to stay in this party and criticize the other party and so forth. We get used to that. But in meditation, it helps us to go beyond it, to go above that, to see things as the way they are. Let go of those filters, right? Let's go of those custom, language, knowledge, and so forth, so that we see things in the clear picture, in the whole spectrum, instead of we see things through this type of filters. It's not easy. That's what they call the reverse way. That's the reverse way for us to delete or to let go of this kind of filter. Yeah, it's not easy, right? Not easy to let go of this filter. You understand that, right? Like William, right? You see that it's not easy to let go of this filter, right?
Right. I think it's pretty automatic, and like I think mindfulness is the way to like notice its activity and not be subject to the effects of it. Because if we don't notice that we're doing it, then we experience it just as how things are, instead of seeing that we're making some sort of interpretation and relating to that, instead of relating to truly how things are. So I think it underscores the importance of being mindful about the interpretations that we make.
Yeah. So that's what, and we discussed about, about 8 consciousness. Yeah, I may send you this. It's very interesting. This is talk about the mind. Did you follow that, right? Well, in Buddhism, we have what it calls 8 layers of consciousness. Oh, okay. Yeah, and this is work well with the what the image here. That's what's here. The eyes, the sight, the ears, the touch, the smell, the taste, whichever thing let's say, I hold this cell phone, I could feel the weight, I could feel it's hard and so forth. It send the information to the 6 consciousness, and it's sent to the 7 consciousness. This is the one that analyze, and whichever thing we like, it's stored here, and is in the way that what call it knowledge bank. And so whenever we encounter information, the new information, we have the kind of called feedback loop. That depends upon how much information we store here. Is we store here and how much we analyze this here. This is in the same way. In the same way, it's working like this one. It's a bit complicated. From time to time, we go over. You've seen this before, right, William?
Not these images here. The other one for the 8 consciousnesses.
This one here. Yeah, this is what they call feedback loop here. Yeah, so basically all the information that we gather from our 5 sense will be notified by 6 consciousness. Like we sit here, when open the door and window, we see things out. If we close the door and window, we don't see. When we close our eyes, when we sleep, we don't see an activity as an activity. But when we open our eyes, when we pay attention on whichever people saying them, right? The 6 consciousness send information to the 7 consciousness. That analyzing. This is my story. That's the cell development. And whichever thing this 2nd consciousness like, it was sent back to the 8 consciousness. It's like the knowledge bank, the storage information there. And when we see things one more time, so the 7 consciousness will take our information to filter out information that we see. It's like the feedback loop here in this one here. Then feedback loop here. When we see things and the behavior it would react depend upon how much information that we have, how much knowledge we have, and so forth. Okay, when we go to, let's say, when you go to South Korea, for example, later on, or even Europe. So if you get used of eating hamburger, right, the information that hamburger you like that you keep in your mind. So you looking for McDonald's, Burger King. You understand that?
Yeah.
But if you eat some kind of Korean food or Italian food, you may not like it because you get used of eating McDonald's, hamburger. In your mind, hamburger is better than Italian food.
Yeah.
Hamburger is better than Korean food. That's what I want to try to say. So again, one more time. So somehow we build up this type of capture pattern to filter out those information, to restore the information in the way we like, in the way we have the knowledge. So in meditation, it helps us to notice it, to concentrate on object, and that's all. So that eventually we reverse the pattern. We let go of those type of filter, so that we can remain pure, so that we can remain impartial. That's what about. So that's why that's concentration, right? That's we need to see things out the way they are, not depend upon our future. Right? This is distortion when we follow with that type of analyzing. Yeah. William, please, number 14.
What, Nagasena, is the characteristic mark of wisdom? Illuminating, O king. When wisdom springs up in the mind, it dispels the darkness of ignorance, causes the radiance of vision to arise, makes the light of knowledge shine forth, and makes the noble truths plain. Thus does the mediator perceive with the clearest wisdom the impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and soullessness of all formations. Give me an illustration. It is like a lamp, O king, which in a dark room would illuminate it and make the objects there plainly visible. So here clearly, wisdom is not like a physical light that's illuminating the objects that we can see, but it's dispelling ignorance. So it seems it's associated with naturally having the right view, the right understanding of whatever is in our field of awareness. So we were just talking about interpretation and analysis, where it requires like thinking, analyzing something, and then we could come up with these inaccurate conclusions. So in with this idea of things how wisdom seems to add another depth to that idea, because things as they really are don't kind of require any words. They don't require any sort of conclusions. They just are as they are. But in this, Nagasena is saying how with wisdom, one clearly sees the truth of the different teachings, like the noble truths, that one's thinking is illuminated, so that it's right thinking, so that the interpretations that are made, instead of making these unhelpful interpretations that lead to suffering or lead to being bound up in some way, it actually, the mind is operating normally, is seeing clearly, and so it's making the right, it's reaching the right sort of conclusions that lead to liberation, that lead to freedom.
Wow. Yeah, you touched important things. Yeah, having here clearest wisdom, right? To see things out the way they are, that's what the wisdom is about. So that you won't be disturbed by the filters. And especially here, William, can you elaborate more why in Buddhist view, if you have the clearest wisdom, you need to recognize the impermanence principle and self-fractionedness of those things. Why is different from the one we say that, oh, they are intelligent, they're smart. Why is it different then?
Why is it different from what?
I mean, that.
Sorry, my daughter was in my ear while you were asking the question.
Yeah, here he said that whoever has the clearest wisdom, they should recognize the impermanence principle, right? They should recognize the unselfness, unselfness, and so that's that of all information. Why is different from someone we say, oh, they're smart, they're intelligent. But here in this views, to have the clearest wisdom, that you need to recognize them.
Yes, yes. Well, I think we've clearly seen historically that facts, things we thought were facts, were not actually facts. So someone who was intelligent, who had collected a lot of facts and knew a lot of things, they could be totally wrong, but they could be very good at learning those things and retaining them. So there's kind of one way. Another way would be, someone who could make a missile to destroy people. Very intelligent person who has the capability to do that, but that's not necessarily wisdom. They could use that knowledge and kind of sharpness of the mental faculty to make actions that actually are unwise, that are based on delusions. So an intelligent person doesn't necessarily see what's important clearly. They don't see the true nature of things. They just have like we can have big muscles and be strong. Well, someone can have a big brain that can be very effective at achieving a goal, but they can still have no clue about what's true or what's important.
You recognize the difference?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just reading that, I just think of the Heart Sutra. that end, like everything is empty. Like that it's all these perceptions that we have that are kind of like those filters that we're everything we see that we're kind of thinking through. So that's what rings in mind. That last sentence.
How about you? You recognize us?
I think about my students that are learning to read. I have some that can read anything, but they could read this, but then you ask them, what does it mean? Can't tell you. They don't understand deeply what's happening.
You understand what William said? You understand that?
I'm trying to wrap my head around it.
Okay. So again, like William did mention and you did mention, yes, if someone's so smart, they can develop missile.
Are you talking about the difference between being smart and being like actually wise? Is that what you're saying?
Here, we need to recognize what we call the notion of in Buddhist view. As long as you have the wisdom, your life more peaceful, your life more happy. As long as you have ignorance, you drain your own selfness. So that's the standard there, the underneath standard. Is that right, William? Right? That's the underneath standard.
Makes sense.
So if you don't understand things, you raise your own disaster. If you understand him, yeah, you raise your own happiness.
No, yeah, I think that's.
For example, let's say somehow someone, let's say your professor give you hard time on grading your paper. So let's say your expectation is that, oh, I'm supposed to have an A for that paper, but no, in reality you get only B. You get mad, right? You get mad. It's unfair and so forth, but you need to recognize, oh, okay, the reason why you have only a B. And if you have the wisdom, you can say, oh, okay, because he correct my grammatical error and so forth and so forth. You don't let your emotion to overcome your mind. But you recognize, you can say his job, not compassion. It happened to me too a lot. But not compassion, but his job to correct your mistake. So that when you later on, when you go out there, when you write the resume, whichever thing, like even when you officer, you have to write in the proper way, and they respect you because you train in school. But at the beginning, when you got back from the test, you have only B. You got mad of your professor. You understand?
Yeah. I see.
So that's when you got mad. That's been illusion. That's been ignorance. That you could not calm your mind out. That does mean you have to you suffer there. But when you have the wisdom, okay, yeah, he correct my mistake. I learned from my mistake. So next time I won't. I will overcome that. I will write in the proper way. I will be helpful for my future career as an officer. If you see that way, you more calm your mind. Right?
Yeah.
So that's what called wise. When you calm your mind, you're more peaceful. You're more happy. That's what they call the underlying standard of happiness and suffering there, if you have the wisdom. Instead of letting your emotion overcome yourself when you see the rate. That's one example.
Okay.
Let's say when you go to boot camp, well, they yell to you.
Yeah.
They give you a hard time. And of course, as human, right, you may drag in emotional way. But that's boot camp. That's what we choose of. And so that they change it so that it can be stronger to deal with any kind of a problem physically, mentally in the future when you go into battlefield. If you understand that, you are more accepted. You're more acceptant with whichever thing they yell to you.
Yeah.
Understand that?
No, that makes sense.
Right?
I actually thought about that example too, like before you.
Huh?
Like I thought of that yelling example too, like before you said it.
So that's why when we do things, if we don't let emotion overcome our mind and our thought, we step back to see things. We can see things as they are. That's the wisdom there. Right? Instead of letting the emotion control our mind. That's one example. Another example is that, let's say, if you see the world out there, right? In Europe, there is all kind of suffering because of one person, right? It's because he want to have a power, whatever in his mind, right? And of course, people support him, and that's why it's create the chaos. But if he had the compassion for others, definitely he would not do that. And especially for the leaders, for leaders, for teacher, for the doctor too, whoever in the position of the leader in the future, right? You're an officer, right? One of your decisions, it may not only affect to you, but the whole team, the whole unit, and so forth, right? And so that's why in Buddhist view, it's based on the underneath standard of happiness and suffering. When you do things that bring happiness for yourself and others, that means you have the wisdom. When you do things that bring the suffering to yourself and others, that means ignorance there. It's quite different from the smart person. Yeah, they're so smart. They can develop missile, right? They can develop atomic bomb and so forth. But they kill people. They harm people. You understand that now?
Yeah.
Okay. So, William, do you know what's meant by soullessness here?
Yes, I think we could also replace that with no self.
Yeah.
Or selflessness.
And how about, you understand what was meant by unsatisfactoriness? You understand this?
Yeah.
Why if we recognize us, we have the wisdom. Why we need to recognize that?
Because inherently everything is empty. So how can something that is empty, your thoughts about it and your beliefs about that thing are inherently wrong. So it's unsatisfactory. Like it's never going to live up to what you thought it was. Where if you just know that it's okay and it's empty, like I remember one time you told the story of the balloon and the balloon popping, and the kid was upset about that. It's like the balloon was always popped. Like that's its nature. It's going to be that. It was never going to satisfy you forever. Like there's always this point where it goes away. So that's kind of how I think about it.
How about you? What do you think about this? Like in everyday life, when you deal with a student, not every student follow your guidance, the teaching. Sometimes when you work every day, when you work into the classroom, there's all kind of problem there. But the important is that whether you accept or you reject that. You know, right? And if you acknowledge that, right? Oh, they're students, they're still young, they don't understand that what they say, they don't understand that what they're doing. With that type of understanding, it's much easier for us to let go of resentment. It's also, why don't you follow me? Why don't you listen to me and so forth? If we use that type of energy, right, it's burn ourselves and it's scare the student. And of course, that's not that's just the way that we work for. So the point I want to say is, in life, nothing can satisfy our needs. Only thing that we do is to accept and move on. Okay, so whichever thing we do, let's say while we're driving the car on the road, so we may have stop sign, we may have traffic, right? But we yell, oh, I'm late now, and so forth. See, we bring ourselves in there, like in the way that we teach in the classroom. You understand that?
Yeah.
Taking the test or do anything, most of the time it would not go along with our wish. The only thing we can do is to accept and move along with what we call roll the flow. Otherwise, we create a lot of anxiety for ourselves. We create a lot of problems for ourselves and others. So that's what this talk about here. Is that right, my son, William? Right? Or most of your patients come to your office. Sometimes they give you hard time too, right?
Occasionally.
Okay.
It's pretty rare.
You're rare. Okay. How could you deal with them then?
Yeah, so there was one woman who came in. She did a treatment with one of the devices that we have, and she didn't follow what she was supposed to do, and so she didn't get the results she was expecting, and she was really upset. And I was not quite in neutral during that conversation, so I kind of relatively quickly, before listening and letting her do her share everything and then choosing my path carefully, I wasn't mean, but I kind of quickly pointed out that she didn't do what she was that she needed to do, and she got more frustrated. And so Lisa, my wife, she kind of heard the conversation, so she poked her head in and was like, well, let's just check back in a month, and then if we haven't gotten the result you wanted, then we'll go ahead and we'll redo the treatment for free to help you get that result, which just diffused the situation. So ideally, I would have listened to her, heard her concerns, and then kind of gently said, well, this is why it didn't work. This is part of what's going on. And still, I could have extended that same offer of, well, and we can do this again complimentarily to help you because you're important to us. and then it would have been a completely positive experience for her. But it turned out good overall. But yeah, the remaining calm and not reacting is so important.
Yeah. So how about how you deal with some hard student, even they're so little?
My most difficult one, he has a lot of behavior and cognitive problems and a lot of trauma from earlier childhood. And so he's got a check-in sheet where every time we transition in the day, I go to him and we talk about how he's behaving. And I know he's going to move during math under his desk and scream and cry, and I've accepted that. But me being able to check in with him has made me a lot more patient. It doesn't always work for him, but it works for me in how I react to him. So I just try and keep in mind that I don't know what they're walking in my classroom with. I don't know what happened at home this morning, what's going to happen at home tonight. I just know that they're in my classroom right now, and I just have to be actually the calm in their life.
Mhm.
And that's not easy.
Mhm. How about you? How could you deal with a hard-headed student then?
I mean, hopefully they kind of, especially the ones that I deal with, high schoolers, especially towards the end of high school, they're finally starting to figure some of that out. That maybe what they're doing is contributing to where they're at and the results they're getting. Sometimes not so much. And you try to like prompt them with questions sometimes and say, well, what if you did this? Or have you tried this? And sometimes that works, and sometimes it still just sort of flies over their head. To me, it's like, okay, we'll try it later. We'll see if you're maybe in a better place.
Yeah, again, you understand that in life, nothing is smooth like the way we expect to.
Yeah.
Or when you go to school, right, you would not expect all the professor or teacher give you good grade.
Yeah.
And sometimes you feel unfair too.
Yeah.
How could you deal? How could you deal with that kind of, say, unfair grade in unfair professor? How could you deal with that then?
I guess I think realizing that there's not really much I can change about it at that point, and then trying to figure out like what I can do that's actually productive instead of kind of wallowing in, you know, my anger about that, and realizing, I guess, if I did fail, like why did I fail? Maybe it was something dumb, but maybe most likely it was like something I did wrong, so I could have done better.
Don't make me wrong. Sometimes we make mistakes too. As a professor, when we rated student. So the young monk here, he go to U well. Last semester somehow his professor rated him wrong. Instead of a B, somehow it rated him down to C. So I told him, yeah, come down to her to see whether she recognized her mistake or not. Yes, she did. He got a B. So sometimes, yeah, we make mistake, and the important thing is that for us, like for me too, I need to recognize when the student raise their voice. If they say correctly, we can correct that. Otherwise, we can discuss with them. So anyway, the point here is that having the wisdom, that means you need to recognize things as the way they are, impermanent things. Things come and go, nothing lasts forever. And nothing satisfies our life, our mind. We just go with the flow. This is much easier for us to calm and be happy. And of course, the idea of soullessness and selflessness is a bit harder for you to understand that, but it's all.
Yeah, I've heard of the concept of no self like a lot, but I mean, I've never really.
Yeah, probably next time we can talk more. All right. Yeah, this is it complicated until you understand, especially when you do meditation. All right. So thank you. Let's time it up. We stop here then. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Come back and thank you, William. Yeah.
Thank you, Jay.